Welcome to the Talent Empowerment Podcast, where we share the stories of great humans so you can lift up your organizations, your teams, and your community. I am your host, Tom Finn, and on the show today, we have a highly experienced global strategy and learning development leader. Her name is Daniela Proust. Daniela, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tom. Great to be with you today.
We are so thankful to have you on the show. And for those of you that have not had a chance to get introduced to Daniela just yet, let me introduce you to her. Daniela is the SVP of Global Learning and Growth at Siemens. Now, she's been with the company for 14 years. She has a demonstrated record of designing and implementing successful transformations and organizational development strategies. She has a natural ability for customer focused. She has systems thinking capabilities, complex problem solving, and is always looking at driving change. Now, she's passionate about innovation and technologies that contribute to sustainable development of society, which is exactly why we have her on the show. And we will get right into the great work that she's leading at Siemens. But before we do that, let's get to know Daniela just a little bit. How did you become the SVP of Global Learning and Growth at Siemens?
Well, that is not an easy question. I like to think of careers as option rooms, and that's exactly how my own life and career has been. So it's not at all linear. It has not been a stringent ladder to climb, if you will. I've done many things in my career and in my life. I've run restaurants. I have been in consulting. I've been in key account management and sales. And at some point, I joined Siemens 14 years ago, as you mentioned. And also at Siemens, I have had the opportunity to work in many different areas, from corporate strategy to sustainability. And now I'm in the people space, leading the topic of learning and growth. So it's quite exciting, each topic along the way.
Yeah, well done. And you have spent those 14 years sort of working your way throughout the organization. And now you're in this elevated global role. You're looking at people and culture and how do we define sort of the modern workplace. How do you do that? How do you create change in a very large, complex company?
Ooh, that sounds an easy question. It's a difficult answer, and probably there's not a single answer to it. But let me take you a bit on the journey that I have been on, let's say, over the last 4 years. I was tasked to reimagine learning for Siemens. That was indeed the task that I was given. So how do you start when you get a task like that, when you are not an expert in the field? Sometimes that even can help because you have no bias, you don't have any history, anything in your backpack that is already framing your mind. So I looked at trends. I was looking at how is digitalization impacting work life? How can technologies help to bring experiences to our people in completely new ways? Also, how is the shelf life of knowledge changing? If we all hear there are no more jobs for life, what does that actually mean for a company? These are big questions, and those were like my starting point to think about coming from a rather traditional approach to learning with more classroom trainings and a very elaborated, let's say, catalog of trainings at that time, to completely think greenfield as to what would a big technology company need in the digital age. That was the starting point. So we were thinking or reimagining learning. Then we were thinking, and I will share a bit later how that looks like and how that has evolved over time and how that comes to life for our people. The second thing was, if you embark on change and you want to radically or disruptively change experiences or things that are people very used to, I would say, you have to take them along. You have to inspire them, nudge them, make them try new things, not be scared about things that all of a sudden come across very differently than what they know. That is why we have created an approach, or let's say a complete program initiative, which we call My Growth, second pillar. I will elaborate on over the course of this call. And the third one is, if you want to change learning, career development, and inspire people, it is also an opportunity to change how you do performance management for people. So what does it mean if a person is good at his or her job? How can you then evaluate people and maybe get rid of stringent systems that always force you to cross out certain fields and make a flag here or there? These were a bit like the paradigm shifts that we were looking at.
So let me make sure I understand that completely, and the audience does as well, because that was a lot of depth. So we started with a green field, and we came up with 3 strategies that really are implementing over a period of years,
Yes.
so that we can create a new culture for a technology company that is digital in nature and meets the needs of people all over the world. So those 3 strategies are pretty straightforward, but I imagine that the depth that goes into the work here is pretty hard to maneuver through. But let's highlight those again. So we've got platform-based learning ecosystem.
Yes.
We've got the My Growth strategy as number 2, and then, as you said, reimagining the performance management side, that playbook for employees around the world. So platform-based learning, My Growth, and reimagining this performance management component. Let's start at the top. Help us understand platform-based learning. What do you change there? How do you use that for the hundreds of thousands of employees?
Thank you for the gateway, because Siemens is a large company. We have more than almost 300,000 people across the world. So that is a huge employee base. And when you take a look at the markets and also the businesses that our company is active in, it varies a lot. So you're talking about building trains, to building digital factories, to connecting smart buildings with grid infrastructure, and a lot in between. So it's quite a big scope. If you look at that we are active in so many different businesses and technology fields and in almost all markets on this planet, it means that the needs of our people, the jobs that they have, are very different. That means that the needs for skill and competency requirements for their roles are very different, very heterogeneous. And in order to support them along their individual career journeys, we need to cover a very broad range of topics. So let's say functional topics, people that are working in finance or supply chain or in sales. Then you need technology topics based on the businesses or markets you are in. You need specific regional context or country-specific topics because you're based in a country where certain things are important. And then you also need to understand the businesses that you are in and the products and services that Siemens as a company is bringing as value to our customers. And all of that in breadth and at different skill levels. So that was the challenge when I took over. How can we reach all our people according to their individual learning needs on their individual career journeys and help them to continuously learn and grow? Sounds easy. It is not, but technology can help. So here's the good news. What you called as a platform-based learning ecosystem, that's what we have built over time. So we said we need to disruptively reimagine learning and bring all our people through one single point of entry to a universe of learning opportunities that they can tailor to their needs. So think of it as a mixture of Netflix, maybe Facebook, and Spotify for learning.
Yeah, that's well said. I think we can all get behind that. Netflix, Facebook, and Spotify for learning. So that means we've got some video components. We've got some social interaction where we can share our own stories and our own thoughts. And it also means we've got some audio that we can listen to and download. And it probably has some self-paced learning along the way as well. I'm watching you nod. You can't hear her nod if you're listening to the podcast, but she is nodding. And so all of this creates this ecosystem. But how do you do this in all of these languages and all of these depths? I mean, this category must be huge.
It is. So let me give you a bit of examples and maybe data. Data helps to capture the topic and the story. So our My Learning World platform, that is our learning platform, which we brought to life for all our people across the world. It enables that, first of all, we can reach all. That was goal number one, reaching all employees across the world through technology. Then you need a broad base of learning opportunities to cover what I just mentioned, the broad range of topic and different skill and competency levels that you need to somehow cater to. And that means on the platform, in the meantime, we have more than 115,000 learning opportunities. And yes, you're right, it's a broad range of formats. It can be quite long-running programs, like a learning path that can take up to a year or two with certification, tests, approvals. That might be the very right-hand side of the spectrum. And you can have maybe a 5-minute video and a lot in between. So it's different formats, it's different lengths, it's different skill and competency levels, and it's different topics. And it works enabled by technology with algorithms that help to match what is relevant for you. Because here's the thing, you can overwhelm people very easily with way too much, and they cannot find their way through and don't know what is now the right thing for me to pick. So you have to give a lot of guidance and orientation and help people to find the relevant for them.
Yeah, that's a great point. With 150,000 learning experiences, and I'm just one person that comes to the platform, how do you actually match me with the right learning experience? Because that's a lot of noise as an employee for me to jump through. So how do you match me up with the right path for my career, for my language, for where I'm located?
Yes, and we have learned a lot along the way. I can tell you that this was a focus over the last 3 years to absolutely enhance experience for our people on this. So there are different ways. One is when you go to the My Learning World platform, it knows who you are. So it knows your, let's say, your business, your region, your job, family, or role. That already helps to set the context for the system. And it can then match already like a recommendation engine on Amazon. Now I pick another example. It can already match per algorithm relevant learning opportunities based simply on your master data of a person. But then you are asked, what topics are you interested in? So you can put your interests. You can follow topics, you can follow people, and it also analyzes your user behavior over time. So if you have certain topics that you search for, then these topics will also be matched into the recommendations that are automatically given to you. That's the algorithm side of things. The second one, which is at least equally important, is that we have more than 700 really great people across Siemens that help us to curate relevant learning content for their area, for their community. Let me give you an example. I may be a salesperson in a specific business, and I know exactly what is now hot on sales. Let it be value selling, let it be, I don't know, virtual selling, negotiation excellence, whatever it could be. And you know your audience, you know your community quite well. So you can then curate and bring the relevant learning opportunities in a format of a channel, like on Netflix, let's say documentaries. And you can say, I now open one for sales, and I curate relevant things for my colleagues. This gives a lot of orientation because it's handpicked, it's quality assured by people that know their field best. And this is what people value a lot. That's at least the feedback I get from all employees around the world, that this is really what they highly appreciate.
I love that. So we're using our own employees who are on the ground, who are successful and are working through the model internally and delivering for our customers. We're using those people to really drive this innovation. So how do you pick? You've probably got thousands of salespeople in your example, and we've got hundreds of them are top performers, I would imagine. How do you pick the right person to deliver on this strategy?
Yeah, I think we created a movement. I called it in the beginning, it's a movement disguised as a project. And you start with the willing in the beginning. You have people that are passionate about that topic. We have a lot of gurus also. We have certain people that are really leading in their field, like a guru in AI, for instance. We have technology experts, and they love to share with their community. It's super important for them to be connected, to have exchange in their community, and they like to contribute. So they're actually, the incentive for them already is to be part of the community and to contribute to the community, and potentially also to be seen as one of those leading experts in the field.
Yeah, beautifully said. I think building the community in the organization is so important. It has so many ripple impacts. Community in an organization can lead to higher retention, higher performance in terms of productivity, higher levels of well-being. For those in leadership roles, it can lead to lower medical costs around your organization, right? There's positives everywhere. And then you sort of layer in the fact that you're so diverse within your organization in so many different countries and languages that being able to put this into one package is really, really impressive. So congratulations to you and the entire team and the 700 employees that are working in this space to create something special for Siemens.
It's really great. And I said it's a project, or it's a movement disguised as a project. In the beginning, we had to win each and every single one over on a one-on-one basis. I had to come to you and say, Tom, look, you are so great at doing podcasts. Can't you please share with people that are interested in podcasts how this works, how you do it best, how you can learn from this? And then all of a sudden you get a critical mass of people that contribute. It's a bit like when you think in ecosystems and platforms, we call it network effects. The more people you win that contribute, the better the offering becomes and the more relevant it becomes. The more relevant the offering is, the more the users are attracted and are coming back. So you get a higher engagement rate and people coming over and over again. And if that holds then true, it's again great for the contributors because they really reach their audiences. That's their number one goal. And if they see that this is a platform, an ecosystem that helps them to reach their group, their community, their people, and it's brilliant for them. So it's a win for all sides.
Well, there's a question playing around in my mind, and I know people are thinking of it. People are thinking, well, I'm not Daniela. I can't figure this all out, and I don't have the budget to pull this off, nor do I have 4 years of a patient leadership team to go and build this. How do you build the business case internally to say, I need an investment from the business, I have a plan that's going to be multi-year, and the outcomes are going to look like this? How do you do that?
Yeah, guess what? I was, of course, challenged by that. And of course, I have to deliver on a huge business case. And I would say it's an invest case. So learning is an invest. And it's a very conscious decision to invest in your people, to invest in the competency development so that people continue to learn and grow, to stay resilient and relevant, and therefore that they can contribute to make the company successful. So at the end of the day, if we don't do that, then we do really something very wrong and we will be out of business. So investing, particularly in the topics that we did, I can tell you it has been a very positive business case, even financially, because technology enables a lot of productivity gains at the same time. You can reach more people through different formats in a almost mass customization kind of approach, which we hear from other industrial pockets. But it's kind of the same philosophy. Through technology, you have a vast array of opportunities, but you can tailor and cut it and slice it and dice it for the individual. And that is highly efficient. It is much more efficient than one classroom training a year where people have to fly, have travel costs and all of that. And I'm not saying that that is bad. You need that too. But we need so much more than only that in the meantime. So I got them convinced.
Yes, you did. And well done. It's not easy to do in an employer with hundreds of thousands of employees to say, I'm going to streamline learning, development, growth. I'm going to make an impact on the business globally. It's not an easy conversation to have at the table, because I think most leaders would say, oh, come on, how are you going to really do that? How are you going to take us all to one platform, one location? We're in countries all over the world. We have 300,000 employees. There's gotta be somebody at the table that said that.
Yeah. And that is why in the beginning, it was, I think we did it smartly in a way. I wouldn't say it was a submarine, but it was more flagged like an experiment. So we are investing in a new approach. Let's start and see how it goes. The investment was not so much at that point in time, and then let's see how it can scale. And I must admit, of course, Corona had a huge acceleration effect. And I can tell you, I'm so happy that we were ready, because our platform had just been soft launched. It was available. We had already learning opportunities there. And all of a sudden, everybody was at home. So we could reach all our people. I know many of my peers at other companies, they were super struggling because they could not switch so quickly from having as I said before, a traditional approach to learning with classroom trainings that you plan and book a year in advance. And all of a sudden, you have to completely shift to a very different mode. And by having had that ready, people really tried it out. I would say they might have been a bit forced to. And then they felt, oh, it doesn't hurt. Actually, it's fun. And there's a lot of cool things. And I can decide on my own what is interesting for me. I can put it on my agenda in my calendar when it suits me. So it's much more tailored and according to the needs that I have as a person. And then it switched. The perception switched from a bit critical, oh, do they now just want to have everything digital, to, oh, there's stuff that is available at my fingertips and at my own terms.
Yeah, I love the way you said that. And I wonder, as I'm thinking about this process, I wonder what your leadership shadow contributed to getting the yes. So what I mean by that is, when you spend time with Daniela, you start to trust her immediately. And I think trust in organizations, certainly large organizations, is a big component of getting things done. Do you think that your relationships with other executives and the way that they trusted you contributed to the success?
Absolutely. And it's something to develop over time. And the people who know me, I'm a very honest person. I don't shy away from topics that might be difficult. I just name them and say, look, here's a challenge. And we have to look each other in the eye. Is it something that we really want to address or not? Do we want to park it? Do we want to approach it? And then if you make a conscious decision, you can take different strategies, right? But I'm a person who's very open and transparent about these things. And that helped me very much along the way. Because if you only make everything sound too sugar-coated in a pink bubble, then people also get a bit skeptical. Yeah. That is why we were very cautious with that in the beginning. We said, look, we think that there are major trends that we have to anticipate and we have to find an answer to. We believe that we have a North Star that makes sense to develop a completely new approach. And let's try it out and adjust along the way, depending on what we learn.
Yeah, so if you're thinking through, how do I get this done? Number one, I love that submarine example, that you sort of come in with an experiment. You come in with a pilot, if you will. We use that term all the time in corporate roles. So we're having an experiment, we're having a pilot, and you go in with a very well-developed plan, but being able to point out where some of the holes might be or where some of the strengths might be and have a frank discussion. It sounds like all of that contributed to getting the first budget approved, which then contributed to some success, which ultimately sort of snowballed into the organization getting behind your vision.
Yes, absolutely. And I must say, I see a great development for me personally, but also for Siemens and for the whole people space, that our leadership team, our managing board, is very much focusing on people development and taking people the well-being of our people, the professional development of our people as a huge priority. That, of course, helps me, because this is a mindset thing. If you think as a company that the people are at the core of your success, then that is also how you treat people, and that is then also how you can develop approaches and experiences for people.
Yeah, very, very well said. And I think we've gone through how people interact with the learning ecosystem. We've gone through a little bit of my growth, and we understand some of this to be a little bit of Netflix, a little bit of Facebook, maybe a little bit of Spotify as well, that is all curated at the individual level. So the third pillar was this idea of objectives and performance management. What's your take, and what did you build that's different in this space?
Yes, let's focus on this one. I would also like to get back to the my growth, because I was mainly touching base now on the learning side of things. My growth goes way beyond than only the learning part. But on the performance management and objectives, I would say there we dared to be courageous and a bit disruptive. And again, we tried it out to see how it works. And I think we are still seeing how it works out. So we shifted from, I would say, a normal traditional approach of performance management processes, which everyone knows. So you set goals for a person for a year, then you have meetings with your manager, you review objectives and target achievements, and then at some point, often also linked to compensation, at the end of a year, you get an evaluation and you are put in a certain, often metrics, on potential and performance. And that then is given as a feedback on how you are doing. So I think this is a very traditional thing. Everybody knows this. We had that too for a long time. And we feel it's not helpful at all. Because what we get as feedback is it causes a lot of frustration. Why? Because people and jobs are individual. Even sometimes roles are comparable, but often not really. And then if you rate people and you then have to normalize the whole curve and move, the curve that you then have over your team or your organization, and because you have rated them a bit too good and you have a mid value that you have to achieve, the whole curve needs to be shifted to the left. And then everybody gets a slightly worse rating than they expected. And then everybody is frustrated. So we felt, so what's helpful on this?
Yeah, Daniela, this is my favorite or least favorite, to be quite honest, part of corporate roles is this evaluation process, typically on a 5-point scale. One's being, oh goodness, we probably don't want them in the organization. 2 is really, you've done some things well, but you missed a few targets, but we know that you're going to work through it. 3 is basically everybody in the company that did a good job. 4 is, you've really exceeded expectations. And I always used to say, 5 is a unicorn. It's a mythical creature. But we read it in books and we know that it's there somewhere out in the ethos, but we have never seen one. And I always struggled with that, because you have these really talented people that, you're right, you shift the whole scale down, and all of a sudden that 4 becomes a 3, and they say, why? And the answer is because we had to normalize the curve. So
That's exactly what I mean.
Yeah. So, and I'm with you. It baffles the mind when you actually think about how that impacts a person's performance and how it impacts their relationship, most importantly, with the company. It's much in conflict, and I don't think that we spend a lot of time thinking about that, except you've taken a different approach. So help us understand this pivot into a new way of thinking.
Yeah, we're still on a journey there. So everybody agrees that this is a difficult component, this evaluation bit. And it sounds funny. What we decided is that we roll out to remove processes. Sounds a bit weird, but that's at the end of the day what we did. And we call our approach growth talks, which means that we say, it is so important to have meaningful conversations between the manager, the leader, and you as a team member and the team. What are you up to? Where are you going as a team? What is your objective? How can you as a person then contribute to that and have a continuous dialogue on that? Because one thing is the evaluation bit at the end of the year. The other thing is that objectives now change much more often. So once a year target is not helpful in many instances either. So this whole then performance management in a tool when you have targets that you review after 6 months and that don't hold true anymore also is kind of useless. So we had different triggers where we felt that it's not appropriate anymore and it's not helping what we ultimately want to achieve, which is a continuous dialogue between the manager and the person to decide and agree upon clear objectives that can continuously adjust, and to see how can the leader help also the individual to be at their best. And that can be very individual of what that means.
Yeah, I think the term meaningful conversation is not utilized enough around the world. I mean, we have to have human conversations about how people are doing. And that does include, in today's modern business environment, how you're doing outside of work. It's not just, your performance is X or Y, you're a 2 or a 5. It's how are things going, right? And I always think about the person that asks for a raise, Daniela, and they come into their superior, their boss, and they say, I really need a raise. I need more money. And of course, our natural reaction is why, or for what, or I don't have the budget in leadership roles, right? We start to come up with the answer. But if you just simply asked, why? Is there something going on in your personal life? Is there something going on outside of the business that we're not aware of? Are you feeling like you're underpaid based on some data that you saw? Really try to understand how people are feeling and what's going on in their life. What if they have a sick parent? Or, my goodness, a sick child, right? Or some other circumstance that's really putting stress on them. And maybe that changes the conversation and it becomes a little bit more human. So your comment on meaningful conversations, I just want to underline it, highlight it, circle it, star it, because those human conversations are so important in everything we do as leaders.
They are. And what we see is context is key. And often money is important, but often it is very other factors. It's so much about as you said, your personal situation in life. For some, it might be helpful if we can help with access to a good kindergarten, with taking for some months part-time, with, I don't know what, be it then that you can park your car in the garage underneath the headquarters because you have to pick up your kid every day at 3 and otherwise it becomes really stressful. So there are so many things that can make sense for the individual in order to enable that person to be his or her best.
Yeah, well said. And so how do you actually keep an evaluation process going with these meaningful conversations? Because there has to be some structure. You can't have 300,000 employees just having conversations. We're going to have some sort of data analytics, something that holds all of this together.
Yeah, that brings me to another quite disruptive thing we did in addition, because we got rid of leadership frameworks. It's another interesting topic. Because we feel that there are certain core, I would call it principles and values that are super important to us as a company. And then the leadership style that makes sense is highly individual. Again, what makes sense in which business, in which context, in which function. And it can be different. So there's not the perfect leader, is the message. Combining that now with the approach of growth talks, it means that, of course, a lot of accountability and responsibility is more on the leadership side. So we have to prepare our leaders to be ready for it, to have these continuous conversations. And of course, to always talk also about performance, but not in a 3x3 metrics but meaningfully, what is it that you want to achieve in your team, in your role, and what do you need to make that happen? One issue that we are facing, and that is a bit culturally different, I would say, across the world, is the wish or need for some structured documentation support. We deliberately decided not to do that, but to share best practices of what some leaders or functions are doing, because otherwise you're back to implementing a process with documentation, and then you go back to an approach that we wanted to consciously get rid of.
So let me make sure I understand this, because this is a huge sea change, what you're doing. You have removed documentation from the performance management component, with the exception of sharing best practices.
So there is a toolbox on Growth Talks that helps the individual to prepare for those discussions. It helps you to think about and reflect on who you are, what you're good at, what your ambition is, where you want to go, and what you might need to be at your best, and also maybe as a preparation for your next career step. And there is the other lens that is also there available for the leaders. How can you best guide your team in this kind of process, which is not a stringent process in a tool?
Yeah, so you're giving everybody the tools to be successful. And as an organization, you're kind of getting out of the way and saying your relationship with your manager is so important. We want you to have these growth talks. We want you to have meaningful conversations. And your manager is going to help decide where this goes for you. Is that really the message?
Yeah.
So what's the other side of the coin? Okay, so the other side of the coin is I'm not performing. I'm below par. I'm not doing a great job for the organization. I'm distracted. Maybe I'm abrasive. Maybe I come to work with a lot of baggage, and I'm not really delivering. How do you handle in that situation folks that perhaps need to find another fit, either outside of the organization or somewhere else within the organization?
I would argue that the traditional performance management doesn't help you on this either. It's a management task. So if you see that a certain person in a certain job role, that it's either not the right role, not the right home, or that person would need to, develop into a different role, then you anyway have to very actively manage it, no matter if you have a 3x3 evaluation sheet or not. I don't think that is a different reality. So we all have to manage teams, and we all have to then see what do we have to do to enable the people to be at their best. And sometimes the best for the person and for the team is also to move on and to find then the next right role.
Yeah. What you're saying is the score, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the piece of paper still didn't have any relevance to what's actually going on in the team dynamics and the individual dynamics. You still need to
actively manage it anyway.
Yeah, you still need to have growth talk, and you still need to actively manage it, and that all happens outside of a piece of paper. Now, you wanted to go back to My Growth, and I want to give you a second to touch on My Growth before we wrap up. Help us understand what that looks like in terms of infrastructure or behavior or mindset.
So My Growth is our approach to reach our employees, and I would say the heart and the mind, through certain experiences and very inspiring communication. It is almost like a cultural transformation approach. It is very intentional, so it looks very human-centric. It's quite playful, so it has an own design. We were allowed to have an own design as part of the company design. It is very human-centric in the way how we approach and talk to people. It's not a corporate formal talk. It's more like, hey, Tom, have you already tried this one out? Do you know about your strengths? These kinds of things, nudging you a little bit.
Yeah.
And we have built it up quite consciously over the last 3 years, starting with, I would call it the awareness phase. So nudging people that learning and career is individual, and it starts with you. it's your own responsibility. The company can help. We can have a lot of tools, trainings, development, support things. But you also need to know who you are, where you stand, what you're good at, what you want. And then these instruments can be used in a meaningful way. But it puts, or we sometimes said it puts the ownership back to the people, while of course taking them along and providing them with relevant instruments that help.
I am so behind this message. I call it pointing the thumb, not the finger. And holding, right? And you can just visualize that. You point the thumb at yourself and you're accountable. Holding yourself accountable for your own growth, development, your own path. Treating employees as fully baked adults that can really handle this, which is a terrific message. Before I let you go, I've got to ask about sustainability. You're big in sustainability. It's important to you personally. What does sustainability look like for you?
First of all, I'm happy that sustainability is now so much on top of the agenda everywhere. When I worked in the field of sustainability 10 years ago, it has not yet been the case. So this is good news. But what it means for me personally is to think in systems, to give more than you take, to think through the impact that you are having on the environment, on the overall closed loop of resources, but also on the people dimension. So for me, it's not just an environment topic. Yes, we only have this one beautiful planet, and that is the core. But at the end of the day, it's a vision to make sure that all people can live well in the limits of the planet.
Yeah, beautifully said and stated. Thank you for the work that you're doing from a sustainability standpoint, and thank you for the work that you're doing at Siemens, impacting hundreds of thousands of lives around the globe. And for those of you that want a quick wrap up, there were three things that we talked through: the platform-based learning ecosystem, my growth, which doesn't allow for corporate talk, but really gets into open and honest conversations, and then getting rid of the performance management playbook and starting over with real leadership at the local level that drives the organizational culture forward. These are unique strategies. They're global in nature. And I think the way that you've laid this out, Daniela, is so beautifully done that we can take these ideas and go do this in our own company. Whether you're a global organization or a local firm with less than 100 employees, you can take on these tactics and build for the future. So thank you very much for being on the show. I'm so grateful to have you on. I've had so much fun learning from you today, and I know everybody else has too. If we wanted to reach out and find you, where would we do that?
Well, as a joke, I would say you would find me outside going for a walk with my dog. But in the professional context, that might not be the right one. So you can definitely find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, beautifully wrapped up there. And if you want to find Daniela, please don't go look for her walking her dog. Find her on LinkedIn. That is a public service announcement. But thank you all for joining the Talent Empowerment Podcast, where we share the stories of great humans like Daniela, so you can lift up your organizations, your teams, and your community. Thank you for being on the show, and we will see you next time. Let's get back to people and culture together.